Call this beat Will Smith, cause it slaps hard. Hear it not when I pull up on your boulevard.
Hey guys, HarryWilmington here. So yesterday I did a live, and before the live started, I had a viewer that actually left me a $10 super chat and had asked me a couple of questions pertaining to a situation he's going through that he wanted me to answer. Unfortunately, when I went to StreamYard to sign in later on, those questions were gone because I guess they don't save the questions in StreamYard. So I told him during my live, hey, leave the questions again and I will be happy to answer them. So he left the questions, but the two questions he asked me, there wasn't really enough detail for me to fully analyze the situation. So I always tell you guys that if you're gonna ask me a question, don't just leave a surface question. Like, I need full details of what's going on in your situation in order to fully analyze it and give better answers. So I asked this guy a couple of questions back and forth in the comment section, and then based on all the information he gave me, I can better assess the situation. So I'm gonna read through the various conversations that we had so I can ultimately give, if you're watching this guy, this is my analyzation of your situation and my suggestions on what to do, all right? So, and again, this is your girlfriend, so you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. You know your situation better than I do. I'm just gonna give you my opinions and my analyzation from an outsider's perspective, all right? So, the questions he asked me, he said, one, how do I properly apologize to a girlfriend without seeking her approval or being a simp, but also making her feel heard and understood? Any good questions to open her up emotionally? And then the second question was how to establish a limit. I want to make it clear to her that we should always talk about the issues and solve them like two adults instead of acting immature and running from the conversation. Well, I'll say early on, what you don't want to do to your girlfriend is present to her your suggestion like this. Hey, so we need to be more adult when we talk about stuff, and we need to not be immature and blah, blah, blah. Because when you put out those negative words like immaturity, running from things, etc., then that makes the other person defensive. And even if they're acting that way, you trying to use that language to describe what they're doing is not going to put them into your good graces. It's going to make them be more defensive and act more immature. So we don't need to call her out, hey, when you run away from things, you're acting immature. That has never in the history of forever made a woman be like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm being immature and I need to stop. So let's get rid of the name calling. Let's get rid of all the things that you want to assess about her and throw to her that she's doing, acting like that's not going to help your situation. Anyway, so I said to him, I need more detail. What exactly are you apologizing for in the first place? What limit are you trying to establish? In what ways is she running from the conversation? So he responded, I took a joke too far and she took it personally. My intentions were not to offend her. So I'll say this, people that, when we tend to do wrong to somebody else, if we care about them and love them, I don't think there's ever an intention of trying to hurt somebody. But it doesn't matter what the intention is. All that matters is, but did the thing that you do or say hurt that person? If that's the case, then we say the whole, I didn't intend to, ego-wise, as a means to remove ourselves from like being that guy that caused hurt. Like, we don't want to see ourselves as somebody that's legitimately putting pain on our partner. So we'll throw out the whole, I didn't intend to, whether you intended to or not. If you did, then that's what happened. But anyway, so he says, the limit I want to establish is that I want good communication. Usually when there is a problem, she overreacts, saying, quote, I don't want to see you anymore, and ceases contact. Eventually, we end up talking about it days later once emotions are calmer and we get back together. I don't want this to happen again. That's the limit that I want to set. Well, I'll say this, because I've been the guy before in the past that has also used the whole like, well, if we're not whatever, then I'm breaking it off. But the difference is, if I do that these days, it's because I've tried time and time again to have legitimate conversations and hear the other person, but also have them hear me out and come to a compromise, and that other person is not doing it. And this speaks to people that do not actually have legitimate conflict resolution skills. So she is one of those people that her way of trying to get her way is to threaten you by taking away the relationship. And she's starting to see each time that happens, and you run back to her and saying, hey, no, let's work it out, yada, 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 that her plan effectively worked. So no, that is not an effective way to be able to handle conflict, but understand she's the person that is very much running from conflict, which means she does not actually have the skills. Because if she did, then if you wanted to talk to her about something, she wouldn't take it so personally. But it seems like every time you're bringing up, hey, this is a situation that's going on, her response is to run from it because she doesn't have the actual skills to sit down. It sounds like she's very easily triggered by things to where she doesn't think that a conversation is going to be able to handle the situation. And that could be based on previous situations. It could be based on how she grew up. Maybe she didn't feel like she was heard in the household growing up. And so now she's transferring that over to you guys, whereby she's already saying in her head, having this conversation is going to be pointless and he's not going to want to hear what I have to say and I'm not going to be able to get my way or be heard. And so I'm just going to go ahead and preemptively get out of this situation. And to your point, you're right. That's not a healthy thing to do. But at this point, she's already had years of probably doing this kind of bad communication style to where you trying to fix it, you can stay there and try to do that. It's going to be a Herculean task because that is a pattern that she's now established. If she's not aware of that being a pattern, then she's not going to be able to do the work that it takes to actually realize that and concentrate on not being that way when she starts feeling these tensions arise when you guys are having conflict, you know? Anyway, so then I said, because he just said that he said a joke, but I don't know what the joke is. Like, you guys need to give me details on the full situation. So I said to him, for context, what was the joke that got taken too far? And so he said, I was driving and I went by a motel. I joked taking her there and even stop at the place. I kind of wanted to test the waters, but as soon as I saw her face going from a smile to a serious face, I drove off and we left. She then exploded and got really mad because she felt disrespected and told me to take her home. Actually, we agreed to talk later today, so I'm preparing for that. I want to properly apologize. So at that point, I'm like, okay, so he took her to a motel and she got mad about that, but I don't know what that's about. So again, I need more details. So I said to him, why would driving up to a motel be taken offensively? Where did she think you were taking her? What exactly were you trying to test? Why did she say she felt disrespected? Was there anything you said to her specifically that potentially hurt her feelings? And so this is where I got the most amount of detail. So he said, she took it offensively because she says that motels are places people just go to have sex, and she isn't that type of girl. From my side, we were drinking a little bit, so it seemed fun to go and chill for a while. The part of the city we were at has motels that are mind-blowingly beautiful. As a man, I feel that my job is to create opportunities for sex to happen. You know, I know that's Corey Wayne's quote. Like, I know Corey Wayne stuff enough to know that that's specifically a Corey Wayne quote where he says, your job as a man is to create an opportunity for sex to happen. So anyway, we'll continue on. So when I said, let's go to a motel in a joking way, I wanted to test her reaction to see if it was fine for me to take her there. I don't feel I did anything bad, but I care for her feelings and want to apologize just in case. But she tends to overreact to things. That's why my second question is about setting limits. I want her to communicate to me when things are wrong instead of exploding and leaving the conversation. So there's a lot to unpack here, right? So to start off with, look, I'm gonna just give you my initial gut reaction when I read the details about what it is you did that caused her to go off, right? There is nothing wrong with wanting to go someplace specifically to have sex. Because I'm assuming if she's your girlfriend, you're in a relationship. There are times when you're taking her out to eat, times when you're taking her out to go get drinks, times when you're taking her on legitimate dates, times when you're spending at home just watching TV and being in each other's company, and also times where you're hooking up and having a good time in the bedroom, right? And unfortunately, there are some women out there that are of the opinion that if you just hit up your girl one day to say, hey, I wanna take you out to a hotel right now and do some fun freaky stuff, that correlates with you only seeing them for sex. And there are moments in time in your relationship where that should be totally fine with both parties. Like there should be times where it's like, hey babe, you know what? I read this new book. I wanna try some new hookup positions on you. I'm gonna get us a hotel. We're gonna go and wild out for 24 hours and just make a day of it of just hooking up with each other. And she should know inherently that based on all the other times that she spent with you, that you don't like her for just that. But there are some times when you just want to get your rocks off with her and you're hoping that she wants to do the same with you. Like, that is totally fine. But because there are women out there that are offended by that because they've been brought up to think that if a guy only wants to have sex with you, that that's all they want you for, then unfortunately those women have a toxic mindset about sex and about what it means, and that sex always has to be meaningful and it always has to correlate with like a date and getting flowers and candy and all this other stuff, and it doesn't. But some women will get butthurt by that. And I'm gonna tell you right now, those women end up being the least fun women to have sex with because it's always like the guy has to jump through all these hoops in order for sex to happen. And you should be dating a woman that will sometimes come to you and say, hey, I need you to bang me like right now. Like, I want you to rock my world. I don't care about, I don't need a date. I don't need to be buttered up. I'm just horny for you right now and I want it. And that speaks to women that have a toxic viewpoint of sex and probably had some toxic stuff happen to them when they were younger as it pertains to sex, or somebody that was very sheltered growing up and was taught that the only way sex is meaningful is if the guy's doing X, Y, and Z, to where she can never get out of her head that it's perfectly fine to just have sex sometimes and it not have to be correlating with some kind of big event that happened beforehand, a date or a poem you wrote her or something like that, you know? So that's already troublesome because the worst thing is to have a girlfriend where you can't just say, hey babe, I wanna come over and do some stuff without her getting offended or starting a fight or being like, well, I need to be wine and dine first. Like, you want a woman that's going to be easygoing, carefree, had attitude, and would actually be not offended if you said, hey, there's a motel over there. You know what? I just have the hots for you right now. I want your body, and let's just stop over there real quick and do some stuff. Like, I get she has an idea that motels have sleazy reputations and indicate that you are thinking for as less than, because maybe she wants like the bells and whistles. She wants the hotel. She wants the really nice layout. I'm telling you, look, I'm 41. I've dated a wide variety of women, and the ones that are carefree and easy, the ones that are like, look, you got like $60 for a Motel 6 and you wanna just make it a quick session in a hotel, okay, let's do it. Like, those women do exist that will not take offense to that. So I stress that I like to make my dating life carefree and relatively easy, and I try to get with women that are easy to deal with, that are, if we do get into some kind of conflict, know how to sit down, know how to talk about it, know how to hear stuff from my perspective, understand that I'm gonna also hear from their perspective, and then we can come to some kind of compromise, all right? But this woman has established bad communication patterns, and she's offended by stuff that honestly, a girl with a good head on her shoulders wouldn't be offended by. Most women, if she was your girlfriend, that means you had to do stuff leading up to her wanting to be the girlfriend that indicated to her that you were overall a good guy that had her best interest at heart and cared for her. If you just so happen to want to take her to a motel to do some stuff, she should not be offended given all the other stuff that you're doing for her up to that point, is what I'm saying. That was my first feeling. The second thing I thought is this, is that you said that you were joking. You weren't joking. You were legitimately trying to see if she was serious about the whole motel thing, assuming, now I'll say this, assuming you had a conversation beforehand where she said, hey, so just so you know, if we ever go out and you want to take me somewhere, whatever you do, don't take me to motels because I have some kind of feeling about motels and I don't want to take them. If she had that conversation with you beforehand and then you took her to a motel, that's kind of like, that's your bad, because you knew at that point that she already had the conversation. If she's having this conversation with you after the fact, that means that you didn't know, and that she could have just said, hey, so this might be a joke, but I just want you to know that I'm not cool with the motel thing, so if you're gonna do that in the future, like, at least make it a hotel. Then, and even then, that she's coming to you based on the fact that you didn't know, she shouldn't automatically be offended as if you should have known, you know? So I don't know which one of those situations it is, but I will say this, is that if you were going about this as it being a joke, which again, I don't think it was, but to the point, women that get easily offended by your jokes, I like my relationships to be carefree and easy, and I found in my past that women that get offended by you saying something or expressing an opinion of some kind or being jokey with them in a way that they can't take and then them getting all mad about it to you, tend to be hard women to date. I'll give you a true story, right? Many, many years ago, I was dating a woman and we were out one night. I was taking her someplace. We were driving someplace we were just having a conversation and something came up on the radio about a celebrity couple that was breaking up, right? And I've always had this joke that I said amongst my friends that like anytime a husband and wife celebrity work together, inevitably they get divorced. I'll give you an example right now. Like Young Jeezy had Jeannie Mai in a music video of his a few years ago, and now they're getting divorced. And I see this happen, again, I just notice patterns, right? So I've noticed time and time again, couples that are celebrities that work together, eventually within a couple of years, they get divorced. It's just a unique observation I've personally made, right? So when I heard this thing on the radio, I just jokingly said to her, oh, yep, yeah, I knew they were gonna break up because they work together and now they're breaking up. So this proves my theory that celebrities, when they work together, they are gonna break up. And my girlfriend at the time replied, but wait a minute, but I've worked with you on stuff before. Like, does that mean that we're gonna break up? Like she was taking my little jokey joke very personally. And that joke that I told turned into a 10-minute fight about how just because I'm saying this thing, it's a joke, and I'm just making this observation of celebrities, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Like, I now had to console her based on a joke I made about people not staying together when they work together. And fast forward a couple years later, we broke up for various other reasons, but there were things like that that happened throughout the course of our relationship. One time I told her, we were talking about the fact that I'm an introvert and I need my alone time. And I just said, you know, hey, sometimes I might want my alone time at home, or I might want to like go down to San Diego and just be like, I need a day to myself to just kind of relax and meditate and mellow out or whatever. And she got offended because how dare I want alone time, and how dare my alone time might include me wanting to go someplace outside of the city without her. Like, this was not going to be an easy situation. So I said, because a woman is getting offended by you being so turned on by her that you'd want to just stop what you're doing, get a motel, do some really quick stuff, and then go back to treating her like your girlfriend. This is gonna be a hard woman to date long term. Now, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. If you wanna have a conversation with her about the fact that you didn't mean to offend her and that you're sorry and all this other stuff, you can go ahead and do that. Honestly, for one, I don't see anything to apologize for. Like, if I'm looking at the situation, again, if she came to you earlier and said, hey, I'm not from motels, and then you brought this motel thing up on her, then you could just say, hey, you know what? My bad, you had mentioned this to me before, and I was just being jokey, but I didn't realize how serious it was for you, so in the future, I'll know not to do that. That's better than saying, I'm sorry, baby, I know I hurt your feelings and blah, 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 blah. Because across the board, especially, like, you notice how when the celebrities mess up, there's two responses. One is a celebrity will come out and say, hey, my bad, I apologize, I'm sorry. Like, look at Drew Barrymore, right? Drew Barrymore's in trouble now because she was trying to have her talk show come back on in the midst of these writer's strikes, right? So then she's all on Instagram, I'm sorry, I made this decision and I have to stick by it and I didn't mean to offend and blah, 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 blah. And she's getting all the pushback and all the madness, right? And then you look at like Bill Maher. Bill Maher also was gonna have his show come back, and then he was also getting a little bit of pushback, and then he came out and just said, look, the writers said they're gonna sit down at the table again, so I'm not doing the show. At no time did he say, I'm sorry, I'm apologizing. And so you don't hear much about Bill Maher's situation, but you hear all about Drew Barrymore even after she's apologized like 2 or 3 times. Why? Because people do not take apologies well. And especially coming from a guy, when guys apologize, women look at that as like, oh, he's saying I'm sorry, which means he should have known the action in the beginning, and it makes you look weak. I'm sorry. It sucks to say that as men, it looks weak when we apologize, but across the board, historically, if you look at the evidence, men apologizing results in them looking weak and the woman actually not respecting them and trying to walk all over them more. So you don't have to say, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. You can just say, hey, you know what? I recognize the motel thing being a thing. Going forward, fine, we won't do it with motels. But again, I stress that going to a motel with a woman that's already your girlfriend is not the worst thing in the world. The fact that she's making it such a big deal speaks volumes about probably the kind of trauma she's gone through and about the various issues and communication issues she has. This is not a woman that's going to be easily fixed. And I am all for dating women that are going to be relatively easy to date because, as I've said in the show before, relationships are hard enough without the people in it purposely trying to make it harder. And this woman is seemingly purposely trying to make it harder by way of her various reactions. And guess what, guy? It's not your job to fix that. So how do you go about this then? Well, if you're going to have the conversation, I wouldn't even talk about the specific incident that happened. I would just blankly say, hey, so I don't know if you've noticed this pattern, so I'm just going to bring this up, but have you noticed how anytime we kind of have like a conflict thing come up that your immediate go-to is to walk away, like, what's that about? Like, where do you think that pattern comes from? I'd ask her that. And then I'd sit there and wait for her to answer. And be like, well, because you said this, well, okay, I know this incident we just had, like, you know, I said the motel thing, you felt some kind of way about it, I get that. I'm just saying, I'm observing a pattern now of like, you know, when I have realistic grievances, or I say something that might not be intentionally trying to hurt you, but you're taking it as this big deal, but the result is we don't sit down and talk about it, you just get up and walk away. I wanna know, where do you think that pattern comes from? And then give her time to actually analyze where that comes from. Let her tell you about the trauma she had as a kid, yada, yada, yada. And then you're gonna say, okay, great, so I don't want that to be a pattern going forward, so what do you think we can do to fix that pattern? Because I'm gonna tell you now that us being in this relationship, inevitably, it's gonna happen again. I'm gonna say something that upsets you, you're gonna say something that upsets me. I wanna be able to sit down and talk about it, but if you have a pattern of walking away, that's gonna make me not think this is gonna be a helpful thing. It's not gonna make me feel as though you're gonna actually stick around and try to work things out. So what is it? What do you think causes that pattern to happen? What triggers it? And then what things can we work on together to make sure that that's not gonna happen? And I stress that you say the word we, because I have found, this is a little hack for you guys, okay? Is that when women are in relationships, everything goes from being you to we. And so when you're trying to say to her, well, I noticed that you do this and you do that, what happens is she starts getting on the defensive because she's wanting this to be a we thing. We're in a coupledom. So you say to her, you don't say to her, well, what do you need to do to fix this? You say, what can we do to make sure that that pattern isn't going to impact our communication in these various situations? Because again, they're gonna come up. We're two different people, we're learning each other, inevitably we're gonna have conflicts, but what patterns can we better establish that are going to allow us to have these conversations? And then from there, you help her work on a different pattern interrupt. Get her to recognize, hey, when you start, next time we get into an argument, she starts raising her voice, you can say, you know what? This is starting to feel like it's building up to a level where you might wanna walk away. So let's talk about where we're at right now in this fight and what things do you feel coming up as I'm talking about these things? Are you feeling like I'm attacking you? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling some trigger? Is this correlating with something in your past that happened? Like, let's analyze that, all right? And so if you get her to recognize the pattern, and again, I have a guest coming on my show next week that's talking all about the various patterns that we have, because she does work with couples where she said the biggest mistake that people make is that they're trying to fix certain like communication styles, or trying to fix like an incident, and it really boils down to like, but this person has a specific pattern that they're constantly repeating that's causing them to react this way. And you have a pattern also. You also have a pattern, because right now it looks like your pattern is, one, you're trying to test her on some bullcrap stuff, but also that when she starts getting in her feelings, you might be one that's probably trying to yell or trying to say, that's not a thing, you're crazy, or whatever. I don't know what your argument style is, your pattern is, but you also have a reaction pattern that you also need to analyze and you need to change, because you're gonna find that as you change your patterns, she'll start to change her patterns. So if your pattern is to try to talk down to her and say, you're acting immature, blah, 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 maybe consider not having that be part of your argument pattern and seeing what other ways you can show up that are gonna cause her to then change how she's showing up in the argument, all right? But again, I stress, women that have a hard time they get offended by jokes that aren't even in the grand scheme of things big deals, they are really, really hard to date. They become not fun to date. They become women that are always super serious about everything you say, and then you start feeling like you have to tiptoe around the things that you're saying because you don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong action that's gonna cause her to blow up. Because again, in a relationship, you're bound to do the wrong thing, but for you to do the wrong thing, and for her to not look at it as like, okay, he loves me, he cares for me, so he's not probably intentionally doing this thing, and so I need to give him some grace. Instead of doing that, and she's coming to you instead and yelling at you and saying, how dare you, blah, 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 that indicates, again, she's got trauma and she has communication style patterns she needs to work on in order to really make this right, all right? So hopefully I answered it. Let me see, let me sure everything you said here. Care for feelings, want to apologize, overreact to things. We'll have a second question about limits, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, ultimately, dude, it's hard to change people. So have the conversation, make it about, hey, like, what patterns are you feeling? These are the patterns that I have. How can we come together and make better patterns so we won't get in this same type of situation? Because I do genuinely care for you. I'm not intentionally trying to offend you. Obviously, in this case that I did, but that's never my intention. So I want you to go into these things knowing that my intent is to do the best for you and to make you feel lively and you're cared for. And so if you're not feeling those things, those are patterns that I got to work on. But in terms of the way that you're taking things, what things could we be working on to make sure that how you're showing up also isn't going to result in a breakdown of communication? So hopefully all I've said here at some point helps you out in some capacity. Thank you for the super chat on that. For the rest of you guys, if you have questions you want me to answer, leave them down in the comments. Write me at HarryWilmington@gmail.com. And also, I will stress, if you go to my website, get my ebook, Stop Losing Women. Get my ebook on how to do better communication. Get my ebook, No Girls For You, The Ultimate Guide to Losing the Girl of Your Dreams. These books are designed to point out to you why the things you're doing could potentially be harming your relationship and ways to show up in better ways that are gonna be more effective, all right? You can read previews for all these books by going to the website and clicking on the various links on the first page, all right? Thanks for listening. I'm Harry Wilmington, and we do live shows every Tuesday at 5 p.m., so be sure to tune in this Tuesday for my next upcoming show. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man. You a high-class man. You a high-class man. You a high-earning, high-value, high-class man.